Welcome to Confessions of an EOS Implementer, a podcast by Talent Harbor. We share unique stories of EOS implementers and the companies they've transformed to give you a rare glimpse into the successes and the challenges of the system in action. I'm your host, Ryan Hogan. Let's jump in. Hey, welcome to another episode of Confessions of an EOS Implementer, brought to you by Talent Harbor. Today, I am thrilled to welcome Mary Reilly-Magee. She's joining us as a certified EOS implementer, also an expert in coaching, public speaking, event planning, fundraising, just a dedicated career to helping entrepreneurs and business owners achieve clarity and alignment in their ventures. We had a pretty impactful conversation. I knew out of the discovery call a couple months ago that this was going to be a pretty powerful episode. And it's because we talk about some tragic events that have happened with Mary, specifically in her business, and how she navigated through that crisis, navigated through that adversity, and a lot of public blowback. And so just an incredibly valuable episode as it pertains to what do we do as business leaders when we're faced with public challenges, or if we have tragedy in our business, and it not just impacts the business, but it impacts us emotionally. It impacts the community. It impacts the trust that your clients have in your business. So just a great episode, and I hope you enjoy and see you after the show. One of the things when I was reading your bio that was really interesting to me, when I was in elementary school, I used to sell creepy crawlers. And so back in the day, it was these machines and like in this easy bake oven. And I would either take custom orders for $0.25, or I would just bring in inventory and sell them for 10 cents. And one of the things that I read about you that stood out to me is something about selling Charlie's Angels. Like what was this all about?
So my dad was a businessman, and he just brought me up to how to do business, in every opportunity. And so one of those opportunities was selling pictures of Charlie's Angels to the boys in my fourth grade class. Was incredibly lucrative. And because my mom bought the gossip magazine, but I just spent my time cutting them out and putting them in a folder, and I'd take them to school, and the boys would all swarm and pick their pictures, and it's 25 cents, 50 cents, depending on the size. And then Mrs. Moran, my fourth grade teacher, shut us down. Gosh, that was the end of that one.
That is hilarious, because I remember my teacher's names as well, and that was Mrs. Price, and Mrs. Price shut us down. So like both of us were shut down by our grade school teachers.
Yeah. She had little vision, or maybe we're getting disrupted. It's possible that it was really disrupted, but
so was that the start of your journey when you think about kind of your life, and we'll get into some of like you became a teacher and some of these other things, but was entrepreneurship always kind of like a calling to you based upon kind of what you saw from your dad, and then starting to sell these things in grade school? Is that really where the journey started for you?
I think so. I can remember that I signed up to be in a swimathon, and I was the only contestant, and the prize was a bike, and I already had a bike. And so my dad said, well, why don't you swim anyway and win it, and then you can sell it and put the money in the bank. So he was always I do remember getting a spanking because the neighbor gave me chocolates. The neighbor made chocolates at her home, and she encouraged me to go around the neighborhood and sell the chocolates door to door. And my mother had said, no, absolutely not. And I did it anyway. So I got it. I remember spanking on that one. But yeah, it seemed like I just love the thrill of providing something that somebody wants or needs, and making money, to be honest. I enjoyed the exchange I get around.
Yeah, it's because like the money or the exchange is the exchange in value, and it just so happens to be money or USD or whatever the currency is. But that exchange in currency of the value that you're providing, it's just there's no other feeling like it. I don't know about you. It's not, for me, it's never been about like getting rich or becoming a billionaire. Like those things are kind of the byproduct of the fun and the joy of just creating.
Yes. It's thrill. It's the thrill of selling. I think that what turned me on,
And how did that, so we went from there to did you then become a 10th grade teacher out of like once you graduated college? How did that come about?
So I went to school and got a degree in literature, and the standard question, it seemed, for someone who's getting an English degree is, what are you going to do with that? Teach? And that I really was annoyed by that question. And so like, no, I'm not going to teach. I'm going to, do something in business. I had no idea what that was. I just imagined that it was a suit, and at that time, hose and heels and a blazer and a giant, cell phone back then that was bigger than your head. And started looking around and realized at the same time, I was teaching swimming lessons at a big natatorium. That's how I worked one way. I worked my way through college. I was teaching swimming lessons and just realized through multiple experiences of not getting hired, not getting the second interview, that I was a teacher at heart, that's where my success was. I could see the fruits of my labor. I could see kids progressing, students progressing, and I loved it. I loved the progress, and I loved the possibility, and I loved the potential of every student I worked with. And that's how I became a 10th grade English teacher and high school swimming and water polo coaches. I also loved to read. So I loved learning and studying and ideas and art. And so they just kind of rolled into each other, these two different interests, the swimming and the English literature.
And so as you were, how long were you teaching English in high school?
I taught 4th grade English for 5 years. Yeah.
5 years. And then as like a side hustle or at nights, like were you also teaching swimming or was there kind of a hard pivot during that time?
Well, it wasn't a good path to becoming a teacher. I had to go back, post-baccalaureate, and get a teaching certification. And so this piece of the education piece of it. And I also got an endorsement to teach, we called it ESL, so English as a second language. And then student teaching in middle school and at high school and figuring out where I wanted to land. And so once I finally did that, I was also coaching at the same time. So I assistant coached at a high school that I was student teaching in. And then, all the while I had these relationships at this huge aquatics center in San Antonio called Northside Aquatics. And this mentor, George Block, who kind of just believed in me and had this incredible organization that was, the best way I can describe it was a leadership factory. I just loved how he came at developing people, developing his athletes and his programs. And so under his wing, I was encouraged to pursue my teaching certificate and then become a high school teacher and then the high school, one of the 6 high schools at the time in that school district, the head school swimming and water polo coach. She was probably like 23 by the time I got my first big girl job.
Yeah. And so it sounds like swimming's been with you your entire life. So growing up and winning a competition to win a bike so that you could go sell the bike. And then also, taking it from the coach factor as you were going through high school. At what point did you have the epiphany or the aha moment of like, I should teach many people to swim and create a business out of that?
So I married the high school football coach. We had a daughter together, bit of a scandal there. And I, wanted to stay home with my daughter and finish a master's degree in literature and was working at the aquatic center. And once again, George handed me an opportunity to take over the adult lesson program. No one was really serving that clientele. And so I took over the adult lesson program, started coaching masters, swim team, and brought my kid with me to the pool, and it just kind of evolved from there. So my adult lesson program just grew and grew and grew, and that grew into like terrified of water to all the way to people that wanted to do triathlons or become triathletes or refine their stroke so that they could improve their triathlon. And so that grew. And then I moved into, I got to rent the water at the aquatic center. And then I got additional water time in the university pool. And so I kind of started renting water around town and just grew that program. And meanwhile, I was still running the night lessons for the aquatic center. So I was the program director for the night lessons there.
It sounds like you had a lot of autonomy with that. So there was programs and other things already happening at this facility, but basically like you saw an opportunity and he may have seen an opportunity for this underserved market of adults. And was he basically like, hey, you go figure this out? Like we'll figure out what it means, but like be the entrepreneur, the problem solver, and like go create this program and grow it and see what you can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, he was really like, it was like, hey, do you want this? Here's a list of phone numbers. People keep calling to see if there's lessons. We have nobody to give it to. Do you want it? And I was like, sure, I'll take it. And so it just kind of grew. You know, it was really quite amazing. There is just a massive population of people that don't know how to swim. And for me, I feel like life without water in it, you know, without the joy of swimming, being able to swim well, it's just not the same quality of life. And so I was really excited to get to give this gift of water to these people. And it just kind of took off and exploded until finally, really, George kind of, again, encouraged me. I was running his night lessons program. He was getting ready to build a second natatorium for the school district. And he needed to know how to duplicate this lesson program and run two programs simultaneously, right? And he was trying to, you know, at that time, Starbucks was really young. And he wanted that Starbucks or McDonald's experience where the two programs, there would be no difference, right? Didn't matter what location you were at because the systems and the processes were so tight that it was a seamless experience for the consumer. And so he sent me to a conference in Fort Lauderdale through the American Swimming Coaches Association. And it was a swim school business seminar with all of these people from all over the world, and a lot of United States people all over the country, but primarily from Australia, because in Australia, swimming is as popular, I would say, as basketball is here. And so the Australians had it dialed in. I'm trying to think of the first name of Carlisle. It was Carlisle Swimming. He's kind of the grandfather of swimming in Australia. And so it was Carlisle Swim School that had come to run this program and teach us all how to run multiple programs seamlessly. And so that was my first kind of introduction to the swim school, learn to swim business world.
Interesting. And so then you took that knowledge and went back and helped him open up the second facility. Was that the next?
Yeah, another one went with me, a woman named Vanessa Almost, and she and I went together, and then we came back and we provided the intel to George and, helped structure the opening of that second location. And in the meantime, George was in my ear continually about opening my own swim school business. And so over time, I started to do that. I joined there was a program taught through UT San Antonio and the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and the Center for Business Excellence, I believe. And I attended this seminar to help me structure a business plan. The group of all of that, a group of 18 people coming together to grow their business. And so this course just kind of took you through the paces of developing your business plan. And in that time, that was probably 2003, 2004. And in the meantime, I joined an organization called the EOS Swim School Association. It was called the National Swim School Association back then. Now it's the EOS Swim School Association. And in joining them, I was blessed to meet a lot of people who were doing what I wanted to do. And so then I got to see a lot of different configurations of in-ground pools, above-ground pools, neighborhood pools people were using, gym pools like I was using, and how did they do it? And family businesses that have been around for forever. There's one school in Houston, a woman, gosh, I'm going to forget her name, but it was Houston Swim School. And the woman's name was Bonnie Howe, and she took me under her wing and took me all over with, her giant minivan and just taught me how to do it, how to do a place of my own. And so the quest was to convince, I couldn't get a loan. So here we go. I've got my business plan. I'm trying to figure out how can I make this happen, my own place. I'm in rented water, which means I got to follow other people's rules. I'm limited. I can't control the heat. I can't control the air temperature, the water temperature, how children come in and out of the pool room. I've got to send little kids into, there was an issue with sending male kids through a female locker room. There's all this kind of crazy, annoying stuff about being in other people's water. And so my quest was to convince a developer to let me build, basically dig 2 giant holes in the foundation of their strip mall. Which wouldn't be asked, which wasn't easy. I went to the bank. I tried to get them to lend me the money. I couldn't buy the property. It was just too much. It was like $1 million back then, which would be beautiful. It was $1 million now, but back then it was $1 million. I didn't have any debt, but I also didn't have any collateral. And what are they going to repossess, And so I ended up borrowing money from my mother, and with all the promissory note attached with interest, and crossed my fingers and convinced somebody. It was actually 2 times around where I convinced somebody to let me use their dig 2 giant holes. Then it felt like it wasn't the right deal. I backed out a bit. I looked around some more. Meanwhile, they went on another path for looking for a deal. And then they came back to me when their deal fell through and said, we're ready to get creative. That's how I got in the first location, which was a strip mall. And we dug 2 giant holes.
The thing that has always been surprising to me, like when whether it was Hunt to Killer or Run for Your Lives, this whole notion of tenant improvements, TI as they call it in the commercial real estate industry, and the amount of assistance that you can get. And so for us, it was just all about office space. So hey, we want to put an office over here. We need to build out 7 offices, and we need a conference room, and we need AV plugs and things like that. And it's we can do all of that for you. And it'll adjust your monthly rent, but we can do that, and we can subsidize it through the monthly payment. When we think about tenant improvements or TI, was that a part of what you had negotiated? Is it's not just permission to dig these holes, but I want your help digging these holes and putting water in there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There was, for all 3 locations we ultimately had, there was significant tenant improvement allocation. Yeah, which was hugely helpful.
All right, so you're all in at this point. You've got confidence in yourself. You've gone through the school. You've been running this business for someone else for a while, so you understand the industry, the business, how all of this works. You put together your business plan. You came up with a little bit of early funding, a friends and family round, so to speak. And then you convinced the tenants to dig a hole and put water in it. So here we go, and we're off to the races. How did it go out of the gate?
Well, it was a little crazy. So where I was before, we were renting water, and I've still had that location where we opened. We opened in, I want to say June of 2006, which is late. It's a late opening for summer swimming lessons, right? And this is a year-round indoor location. And what I found is that, the systems I had in place for running a business that had 12 hours of water time a week, as opposed to the systems I needed for running a business that had 12 hours a day, of water time available, completely different. And so, I mean, we blew the doors. I mean, we were the very first premier indoor year-round, swim lesson program in San Antonio. And so it was like this just rush into our business. So it was a beautiful problem to have, but I was like hammered because, again, we didn't have the systems in place. The phone was ringing off the hook. I remember having to leave a message on our voice machine, that said, please don't leave a message. We can't call you. Please just come in and see us. We're so sorry. That was the problem we were having. And so for me, it was like running, trying to get in front of it. And yeah, I can remember. I can remember having this really, really terrible crick in my shoulder that I named Mike. I thought it was because of what this employee named Mike that I had, and that he was giving me a hard time. But actually now looking back, I think it was just the running, trying to get in front of it,
Just moving. And how did you, so it sounds like to a certain extent, and in EOS, we call this hitting the ceiling. You hit the ceiling pretty quick. And so how did you resolve these issues?
Absolutely with people, right? People and process, right? People and process. So I had to duplicate myself, right? Make a bunch of mini me's and figure out what to let go of and what I needed to keep and who I needed to develop. And so getting the right person in the sales seat, getting the right person in our ops seat. I was the integrator for sure, but also the visionary for a long time. But getting the right people on the right seats, and that took a lot of, trial and error. People don't come out of college with a aquatics degree. They don't come out knowing how to build a freestyle, or teach a 3-year-old how to put their face in the water, And so it was a pretty long road to get to peace and calm. I think it took probably, I would say it was maybe 2 years before things really, where I didn't feel like I had to be there every Friday night. I mean, we wore all the hats, my husband and I. It was maintenance. We were the maintenance department. We were the, registrars. We were the, head instructors. It was massive. And then since things calmed down, so as soon as things started, like I had people in place and things were calm, I didn't have to be there every Friday night, every Saturday morning. A developer walked in, he was my client. He had a property out in a suburb of San Antonio called Shirts and said, hey, are you ready to do another one? And by then I was like, well, not yet, but yeah, it's in the dream there. And he's like, well, why don't you come out and look? Just come and look. Next is a tap. Just come out and look. And so my husband and I kind of did the perfunctory, went out to this place and it was magical. It had one of the challenges we had at our first location is we didn't think about parking. And we didn't have enough parking for what we were doing. We shared the strip mall with a massage therapist. And so our schedules were kind of overlapped, right? When you get a massage, it's not at 2:00 in the afternoon, right? It's after work and on weekends. Well, I guess when you teach swimming lesson, for the most part, nights and weekends. So he came in and we went and looked, and I was really tired and wasn't confident, but we walked in, we drove up, and that parking lot was magical. It was massive and seductive. And the space was really big and the turns were amazing, but when we first walked up, I was like, it looks nice, great, thanks, I'm not ready. And so he showed up in my office a week or two later and said, what's it going to take? What do you need to be ready? And I need this. This is mostly people. I need time and I need to develop these people so we can duplicate. And we did it. We opened it, the second one in 2009. Swine flu, that opened, and the very first case of swine flu happened in that town. And right when we opened, and we were in this is a very small rural area, and it was super challenging. We were outsiders, from the city, and we were doing auto debit on people's credit cards, which was like unheard of back then, and people didn't trust it. What, I'm going to give you my credit card and you're going to charge it monthly and keep hold of it without my permission. Like, they couldn't deal. And so then swine flu happened right when we opened. I instantly lost, I don't know, probably 4 of my staff members because the city, not the city, but because some of the staff, people were freaking out about swine flu. And they felt like my staying open was recklessly endangering the health and well-being of the community. And I was like, I think I had just $6,000 in the bank, like I needed to pay payroll. It was insane. So I lost some people there. It was a hard time to get people to come in. And then we had a cricket infestation, which I don't know if you've ever in Texas, in San Antonio. And I don't mean like 1 or 2 crickets, but like covering the backs of the building. You would walk into the grocery stores during this time and be crunching on crickets. And for us, we had this tilt wall building and they didn't seal the between the roof and the building. They didn't seal. So there was this gap and it was connected to our pool room. It was one of the walls in our pool room. And so that was a heated space. And so heat and moisture was going out through the crack. And it was like a siren's call to the crickets. And they just came. There was a field behind us. Came up the wall, through the crack, and dive bombed into the pool. It was crazy. When my husband would come and he'd have a leaf blower. And he would blow all the crickets in a pile on the pool deck, sweep them up, throw them away. And then he'd get in the pool because, they'd float and like to the tile. And so then he got in the pool and like would scoop them, throw them in a garbage can, take a step, scoop them, throw them in a garbage can. For weeks it was. And a mom came in and said, you just need to bomb this place, And I was like, and then my best friend said, if you can't fix it, feature it. Brilliant. And so I was like, free credits, free crickets for all, bring bug box foods, kids, calm down, just kind of, how do we make a joke out of this? Because the whole city was suffering the crickets.
That's brilliant. Did that turn into anything for you? Did people actually come with their things or was it just a fun joke?
A few kids, but yeah. We just had at that point, we were walking around with handbags, sucking them up. They were in the light fixture. I had a rocking chair across from my desk. I can remember being on the phone and a cricket, like sitting on the top of the rocking chair, like taunting me, singing his song. Unbelievable. That was number 2.
Now you've got 2. So you had one, you hit the ceiling, and then finally, a couple of years later, you got it fully optimized, and you're like, okay, all right, so this is what it's like. And then somebody came in and disrupted all of that because they were like, hey, let's go open a new one. And you were like, oh, no. But it wound up being a magical place. And so now you've got 2, and what's happening? How long does it take to like get back to a place in which you feel like things are running smoothly and you're kind of out of the day-to-day?
It took a pretty long time. One of the byproducts of having 2 is we had this us versus them mentality from the original to the number 2. So, overcoming, there is no us or that us and them, there's only us, kind of helping people like we are one. Took some time getting the right people in the right seats. I promoted people beyond their capability a few times, and we had to learn really what the qualities were of a great product director, general manager, opposed to a paper pusher. Like I think that I really had to learn the personality types that would put paper or projects before people. Because we're a people-centered business, and so the paper can wait, the people cannot. And so teaching that, it took about, I'd say 2012 before that one was really started to go. I think I didn't take a salary from that location until 2012. And at that time, I think it was $1,000 a month or something that I was taking. It took a long time to ramp and get it going, get the community to trust us and love us. And so I'd say 2012. And right around there, I started to get itchy again.
And one, I love the "we are one" comment. I won't hold it up, but right behind me is our core values that we had at Hunt a Killer. And because we ran through EOS, we had we've got the story, we've got the tangible example, and then there was a creative way in which like it turns into a booklet, but it also can unravel into a poster. And so right behind me, the number one core value is "we are one," because I agree with you. Like when you start to see those silos and you start to see the us versus them, or like, and that can go from core function area to core function area. It could be senior leadership team level, versus all the other staff, and just trying to nip that in the bud as early as possible, which it sounds like you did, is important. So you started to get the itch. So now, like, finally, things are smooth, and we just got to the same place we were at the first. And unfortunately, you get an itch. And so what happened?
So I just started to go to Tony Robbins stuff, and figure out what was next for me and who did I want to become, and where were my gaps as a leader, and how can I grow myself, and also my marriage as well, grow my marriage, for my relationships. And what did I want to do next? Was two enough? Was I done? Was I going to go do something else? And in that process of kind of going through all the Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within, Date with Destiny, Business Mastery, Life and Wealth Mastery, I felt like I wanted to do another one. And so in 2014, we built the third location. And this was the one that the first two were kind of shoestring. We did it on a shoestring. We did it, I had almost paid off my mother from the first one. And my best friend, by the way, my best friend loaned me money for that first one and was annoyed that I paid her back too fast, which I'm like, my mother has to love me. For you, I want to keep you. So the second one, I got a new loan from my mother, and this time the SBA was happy to loan me money. They were kind of tripping over themselves to hand me some money, but they were both shoestring setups. And so this third one, I just wanted to do it right the first time. Tile everywhere, tile up the walls, big pool, the right systems, chlorine generation systems. They'd been in a lawsuit because of the system they bought at our second location didn't work. And so it ended up being $1 million project, and in a strip mall, right? So I'm putting in $1 million of improvement into something that I can't really take with me, and so that we opened that one in 2014. I did all the demographic study, did all of my due diligence. I hired the right people to help me, pool builders, contractors, and it was a beautiful location, absolutely, but expensive.
Did that one, being that you didn't do that one on a shoestring, you put the right infrastructure in place out of the gate, and a lot of your lessons learned and finding the right people. Did you see a noticeable difference in the scalability of that one out of the gate? Like, did that one perform better? Did you see changes?
No, it didn't perform better. What the same thing? As far as did we do more lessons there? Did we attract more clients there? It was there's just a strange location. Like the demographic studies, showed us that the people were there. And it just was a really slow grow. What I did right was more materials, where I spent the money is putting in materials that were easy to clean, that were more green, like automatic lights that turned on and off, and the faucet that, automatic, so we could save those resources and, laid it out in a different way and used better materials for changing rooms and all of that kind of stuff. But as far as the program was great, and the pool design was great. It's just it did not just ring the way we hoped and thought it would, given the demographic. But it didn't go. I mean, it just didn't grow at the rate we wanted it to or predicted.
And when you think about that, is that really about all about location? Like, is there something that you can put your finger on there and say, it was this was the reason it did what we wanted to do, maybe in the long term, But all of our study, all of our research, all of our gut feel and experience that we had in this, we thought it was going to perform different. Is there anything that you can look back on and say, like, this was probably the culprit of that?
I mean, it's all just guesswork, when I think about our first location, where it was located, very heavy kind of doctor area, so medical center area, and a lot of the children and families there were all, kind of professionals, and so a lot of nannies bringing the kids to lessons, stuff like that. Second location was more stay-at-home moms, military area, and that was that demographic. And then this third location, it was a hard nut to crack. We were really figuring that out. If it was just parents were, maybe it was mostly two working parents, and weren't available for the daytime stuff that we needed to build our numbers that were built out at the other two locations because of the demographic makeup of the people. I don't know. That's my guess. I mean, when I sold it in 2018, we were really challenging everything, all of our beliefs, all of our processes, all of our standards, and trying to raise the bar and figure that out. And
so now you've got 3 gyms spinning. So I think you said you opened that did you say 2014 was the third gym? 2014. Let's say it follows the same model as everything else. And so it takes a year or two to get that plate spinning. And now you can finally step away, maybe out of the day-to-day of that business. You've got the right people. What happens next?
Well, I mean, we did a date night event there. We did a date night event for 12 years. And so the date night was an opportunity for kiddos to come and swim and play and have a great time, get practice time in the water. Like, that's a skill, swimming's a skill you gotta do, right, in order to get great at it. And so they're having time in the water, playing with their coaches, getting pizza, art projects. So it was a drop-off program for kiddos ages 3 to 10, 12, depending. And we've done it for 12 years. And at our third location in February of 2018, the 2 people charged with the duty of keeping the kids safe in the pool room failed to follow our processes and protocols. And that resulted in the drowning death of a nearly 4-year-old little boy.
And what happens after that? I mean, that's tragic. And now you are the business owner, and you've got to take care of your own people. You've got to take care of yourself. I'm sure that this impacted you. I remember reading, it was a book on the CEO of Disney, and they had that incident that happened in Florida, and he was in Shanghai, and he got the call, and like the steps that he took and the stuff that he was doing behind the scenes, and the way that actually impacted him as a human. I don't think we think about very often of like, there were more people kind of involved in the emotional side of this. And so what did that look like for you?
Well, I mean, what do you do when your business is drowning prevention and a child drowns in one of your pools? Me personally, I mean, my life's work was around preventing this awful tragedy. And just the thought of a family going through this kind of pain was excruciating for me. And I was crushed by the failure, by the failure of the staff to do what they'd been trained to do. It cut me to the very core of who I am. My identity was tied up in our ability to provide this service effectively, right? To provide the opportunity for people to learn to live in and love the water. That was our kind of quest here, is to give this gift. And so to be the opposite was devastating and absolutely crushing to my core.
When you think about some of the things that business leaders deal with, a big part of many businesses is navigating adversity. navigating crisis, what to do in public backlash. Like what was happening to the business at that point after this tragic incident? Like, were you losing clients at that point? Was the media involved? What was going on?
So, I mean, when it happened, I was in Dallas speaking at the EOS School Association, and I was actually at dinner when I got the call, and turned on the cameras and watched this little boy receive rescue attempts from the fire department. I mean, I don't know how to describe the level of disbelief, I think, to be honest. It was very, very difficult to accept. And I would go to sleep at night and wake up at 2 a.m. and have to reaccept that this actually happened. And then I would go to my office at home and start to reply to email. Parents not understanding what happened, wanting answers. Families trying to decide if they should stay with us. Could they continue to trust us? This family that lost their little boy, they were with us in our program for 9 months prior to signing up for date night. Like, this mama trusted us. She had no reason not to trust us. And I trusted us. We did the training. We did the work to make sure that everyone that was employed had the skill set, to keep the kiddos safe, which isn't brain surgery, by the way. It's a matter of being vigilant and staying present. And so the navigation of it, I mean, it was the biggest news, I was told it was the biggest news story of the weekend in the city of San Antonio. The press was definitely asking me for a statement. My friends at the U.S. Homeschool Association, my colleague, supported me, helped me put together this statement. Again, it was hard to believe. This was incredible to me that I knew it could happen. I know having pools, anyone who has a pool, it's a massive risk, right? It's a massive risk. And I knew that. I was taking that risk in order. You can't teach swimming without a pool, right? So you have to provide the very thing that could take someone's life in order to save it, if that makes sense, that paradox there. And so, trying to navigate the press, having I had a friend who owned a PR firm who offered their services to me for free. So they kind of helped and supported me. I had the advisory boards that I was a member of, the alternative board and the entrepreneurs organization. Those people all what do you do? This happened on a Saturday night. On a Sunday, this little boy, I found out on the news that this little boy had lost his life. Prior to that, he had been revived before he left the swim school. And it was a matter of, what do I do? I had no idea how to handle this situation, and I was destroyed. So I think the best thing I can say is that the people who loved me formed me, and I shared out, like, my husband had to teach swimming lessons at the second location. He taught babies, and he was like, do I go to work today? And we decided, yes, you go teach those babies how to swim. And I went to my office and sat in my chair and looked out at the parking lot and watched people come to be with me, come to hold me up, come to support me. So I was incredibly blessed to have just an amazing tribe of people who helped me navigate this. I think that those people, being loved by those people, helped me remember why I had to keep going, because it got really tough. It got tough in the media. It got tough with the family, and it got tough just accepting that this happened to this beautiful thing that was created by so many wonderful, generous, smart, caring people. It was very difficult.
When you were getting some of the advisory help and how to put a statement together and how to release that statement, like how did that process work? And are there things that you look back on now in which you would have done differently, knowing what you know now and having traversed through this type of adversity?
So, I mean, the initial statement to the press really it was written by my from school business friends, and that I approved and handed over via the PR firm. Beyond that, to be honest with you, Ryan, I know there were a few things like that I was asked for. I can think of one other statement that I was asked for, which was that we no longer did date night. I canceled it. Well, it's no longer worth the risk, right? And I believe now that I would never recommend a parent drop their kid off at a pool ever. I mean, once they're in competitive swimming level, sure. But any child under 10 who can't swim exceptionally well should never be dropped off. And so I regret that we had that program. I regret that. I mean, I think it provided a lot of good and a lot of fun, and the risk obviously wasn't worth it for parents to be able to leave their kiddos. And that was part of the deal, is trying to provide some respite for parents and fun for kiddos and time in the water. After that, kind of there's like the first few months of like slow motion of trying to keep going, trying to like put my mask on and show up for my team and for my clients and answer questions and make sense of something that is impossible to understand, right? It's impossible to understand how someone could leave a pool room full of kids that you are responsible for, So I honestly don't even remember what your question was,
Yeah. When it was more along the lines of like the interactions with the media and like looking back on those, and it sounds like the first release that went out, it was a contribution press release where you had assistance and then approved it and went through the PR firm. It sounds like there were some follow-on kind of calls or requests from media of like, is this a program that you're going to continue, or things along those lines. What was like, were media outlets getting your phone number and calling you for comment, or were they working through the PR firm?
Some were calling me directly, some were emailing me directly, some were working through the PR firm. What I remember, like one of my EOS Implementer at the time, who was also the facilitator of my tab board, there was a press outside one of the swim schools, and he went and talked to them. He went and sat with them and talked to them about me and about what was happening, and tried to like put some humanity into this sensationalization. I had press that were hanging out outside the swim schools trying to talk to parents about this, and so the parent would have their kiddo in hand, and the press is asking parents about this drowning that happened in front of their kiddo. And I mean, it was extremely difficult. And so, I mean, I had these beautiful people with me who provided a buffer for me. Later on down the road, once the lawsuit was over, was settled, and we kind of got we were probably about a year or two out from it. I got contacted again because the family was trying to get criminal charges filed against me personally, and the press reached out for that, and I didn't respond.
When you look back at the times, whether it was that time or the other times in which the press was reaching out, do you have any lessons learned as far as like, is that the recommendations that you were getting from the PR firm, is like, we will only release comms in an official environment in which there's something that's drafted and we've all had our eyeballs on, and then we will be intentional with the release of whatever that message is. Or do you look back on this and say, like, maybe I could have answered the phone? And by the way, there's no right or wrong here. I'm just curious your perspective years later, looking back on it. Like, are there things that you would have done different?
I think one of the questions I have is, there were some opportunities. I had clients in my swim school business. One of them was a reporter. He asked if I wanted to come and be interviewed, on the news. And I declined that opportunity because I wanted to do no harm to the family. I was afraid. I'll be honest, I was terrified of saying the wrong thing, of being vilified. I was already being vilified, in social media. And I do wonder, I look back and I think, was I too quiet? Did I, because I was quiet, trying to be respectful and honoring of the family's pain, did I cut off maybe some opportunity that would have been alleviating, would have been clarifying? I don't know, it's hard to say. I mean, I read a letter to my clientele, and that letter kind of got inflamed, and misapplied in the lawsuit, so there was a reason for me to be terrified in everything I said, because I was being told it would be held against me, anything I read or did. And so I was just really trying to do the right thing in a situation that felt like there wasn't a right thing, or it just wasn't clear what the right thing was. And so what I chose as the right thing is to be quiet and continue to have a low profile. Maybe I regret that. I mean, I don't think, I wish I had stood up for us, to be honest with you. I wish I had. This awful tragedy created a massive eclipse of all the light that Love to Swim School created. We did 3,000 lessons a week. We were coming close to nearly 1 million lessons taught over 20 years. And that's a lot of great work. We employed the student workforce. I tried to be a leadership factory the way George was at his aquatic center. I wanted to develop people and provide a quality of life that people wouldn't have without learning to swim well. And so I think that's my biggest regret, is that I didn't stand up for Love to Swim School, the staff, the people that created it, that helped make it what it was, which was a beautiful, loving place to learn, to live in, and love the water. So that's my regret, gang.
When you were putting through like the official comms, for instance, or even the letter that you wrote to all of your current customers, which you said later got pulled up in one of the lawsuits, like did you already have a chop chain in effect where like the lawyers would get a review as well? So there would be some sort of draft. You would look at the draft of whatever the public comms were, whether it was going to the media or whether it was going to your whole client base. Like, did you engage lawyers at that point that would help you look at things through a legal lens? Or was it more so like, we need to get this message out there, like, we need people to understand, like, not only just what happened, but like what we're doing about it. How did you think through those sorts of things?
So there's one lawsuit, right? And I had one attorney who was the attorney provided through my insurance. And so she had one perfected. And I did push like the letter. There wasn't official comms, I was careful. I had it approved by them, but it was always with this trepidation. And then when I wrote the letter to our clientele about what happened and what we were doing in the future and why it happened and how I felt about it, that did get vetted by the attorney, and I said I'm sending it anyway, because I felt like, her job is to be ultra conservative. Her job is to, she's the worst case scenario. That's what her job is. For me, I needed to be honest and have integrity and nobility in dealing with this catastrophe. And so I sent the letter with some despite some concerns that she had. And no matter what I said, it was going to be used. It was going to be put in the hands of the other side, I guess, the prosecuting attorney.
And it sounds like there's a lot of different kind of moving pieces in all of this. You've got the business, you've got your staff, you've got current customers or current clients. You were doing 3,000 a week. You've got the tragedy and the events. You've got that family. You've got the media, and then by extension of the media, both by the media itself and by social media and other things, you've got the general public. And I think as we all know, the general public very much reads headlines and immediately makes an opinion. And so I think there's a lot of business leaders out there, maybe not as tragic as this incident, but that have dealt with kind of public blowback and have become a villain. Like as you look at kind of this villainification, I think as you called it, like how did you navigate through that? What really kind of helped you get through that? Or looking back on it now, are you like that was tough and I wish I would have done kind of these things as this kind of public backlash, whether it was social media or other channels, was taking place?
I mean, I was crushed, Ryan. It was very difficult for me to accept the fact that my business had failed in its mission. And so how did I get through it is your question, right? What did I do? I sought therapy. One of the things too is like you're the leader. Like I own the business alone, wasn't with my husband, and I wanted to. He was an employee in the business, so I wanted to shield him. Because when I didn't shield him, his grief and brokenness, magnetized mine. And so carrying it, holding it in tightly, and then, had to go to therapy and find somebody so I could let it all out. And that took 3 tries. It took 3 therapists before I actually found. The first one was I'm still trying to even believe this is true. And my first therapist was giving me homework. And I was like, I just need to verbalize what is happening. Second therapist was great, helped me learn how to express my emotions, which I spent some time smashing some stuff, there's those rage rooms. Have you ever been to?
I've seen them. Yes. Sometimes they'll have a car there. You could throw a sledgehammer into it. Incredibly
therapeutic. I went a couple of times, and every once in a while I feel like I need to go again. But man, there was a keyboard that I remember feeling and getting a lot of catharsis out of smashing a keyboard. So I did some exercises like that where I just tried to release. I mean, I didn't figure out until 2 years later, I was actually sending a cease and desist. And figured out that I could scream in my car. And being able to do that was cathartic. And I had beautiful friends. I just had these unbelievable people that just held me up. My friends at the EOS Swim School Association, they sent me something, me, my staff, my family, every week for a year. I have a quilt of their swim school t-shirt they gave me to wrap me in their support. They knew what a devastation this is for anyone who owns a learn to swim business. This is the reason we exist, is to prevent this. And so, saying yes to all the support, that's one of the very first things that, subtle voice in my head, the voice of God or my dad, and, wherever my dad is, said to me to say yes and to not ask why. Why me? That was not an option. Why not you? Right? And so I just decided to say yes to every offer of help, whatever that looked like, knowing that my saying yes was providing the people who loved me with an opportunity to help support me, because I'm sure you know, Ryan, when someone you love has hurt you, it's one of the most helpless feelings, right? And so saying yes to any offer helped them, and boy, it really saved me. And then third therapist who was really beautiful and wonderful and magical, really helped me. I had all the things that were said about me in the media, in social media, in the community. I carried it. I took it on. I owned it. And it was like a big, heavy coat that I was carrying. And that third therapist helped me kind of get, one arm out of that coat and eventually hang it off the side, and then finally for it to drop. And then I hired a coach to go next level because I was still carrying this pain and anger, and I still am, to be honest. I haven't figured out how to let go of the anger, but I know that without the therapy and the coaching and the support of the beautiful, wonderful people in my life, I wouldn't be sitting here, because it was that crushing to me, this terrible tragedy.
When you were talking about the screaming in the car, I chuckled just a little bit, because I've had like a couple of those, and it's so relieving. So just a quick plug for that. But one of the things that I really heard from all of this is like, it took a village. Like it wasn't about like, the help from the PR firm. It wasn't just about the help from, the swim association or family or friends or clients at time who were coming in and you were watching and talking to them. It was all of this. And it was all of this coming together that really helped provide that support for you to get through this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like what I did right is I had those relationships, and I allowed those allowed myself. Like, one of the things I really learned is that generosity is an infinity loop, right? And that you have to, we like, as leaders, we like to be the givers all the time, right? That's what we know. We're the givers. That's our position. And so when you are in a receiving mode where you need to be a receiver, I've seen a lot of leaders struggle with this, struggle with receiving. And if there is a gift, this is one of the primaries. It's just really learning how that, we all take turns. We all take turns, and you have to be willing to receive. There's humility in that, and generosity in being a receiver, right? So that other people get a chance to be the givers, and to me, that was a profound lesson.
That's huge. So I was looking to my left, and the reason is because I was looking at the book that I've got, The Go Giver, and you're absolutely right. Like, yeah, you talk about the infinity loop, and it's all about just putting it out in the universe, and somehow like good things will come back. And I'm a deep believer in that. What just really struck a chord about what you were just saying is the receiving. And like, as you were saying, like, some people struggle to receive, like I struggle to receive. And when you just talked about it as like, it's just as much as giving, because it's almost like a gift to them to receive what they're giving. That's a really interesting way to put it. But yeah, I think I struggle in that area too, which is interesting.
It's another form of generosity, that receiving piece. Yeah.
So what? So now that we, you're a couple of years into this, like, I'm sure the business doesn't look the same. It obviously doesn't feel the same, and I think that's what I've heard you saying. And like, what happens next? Like, how do you? Now we've talked about you personally. We've talked about kind of what happened, but there's still a business that needs to operate and that needs to run, and that's a pretty significant PR crisis. And so, as you're navigating through this, does the business survive? Does it thrive? Does it, like, what's going on now over the next year or so?
Well, to be honest with you, that same mentor, George, it's kind of like an uncle, I reached out to him, Uncle George, or my big brother, George. He I didn't have a dad alive. I didn't have a brother alive. And my husband was not able to be who I needed him to be. He just wasn't, he was in grief. And so George played that role, and he encouraged me to sell it, honestly. The business was, people were exiting. There was a cancel agenda being promoted to try and cancel us as an organization. What was beautiful is that the staff stayed. So many of the staff, like very few people left, and they stayed and they persevered, and we kept going. And I, in the background, was searching for a buyer. My husband wanted me to sell it. He was tired of being in a maintenance department. His heart was broken. My heart was broken. I was terrified that this could happen again. How did it even happen this time? And oh my gosh, I just was terrified. I had lost my trust and faith in my team, which isn't fair, to be honest. It was a mistake. No one went to work that day with the intention of hurting anybody. And they lost sight of what's most important, which was keeping everyone safe. That was the most important thing to do. And so, I started looking for a buyer. And after lots and lots of conversations and lots of NDAs, I had a couple of buyers interested, and ultimately settled on one who happened to be a mentor of mine at Moore's Swim School. And they ended up purchasing us, And so that sale happened in November of 2018. The accident happened in February. I'd sold it by November. I was running on EOS. So I had my ducks in a row. And Don Marenko was my EOS implementer, and he's also the first guy that I called from the airport on Sunday morning on the way back to San Antonio to figure out what happened. And he's the guy that went to meet the press. And he's the one who is the facilitator of that tab group. And so he encouraged me to be a EOS implementer, actually, after the sale of it. And I really was very lost after the sale. Like, I was really lost after this happened because I didn't know who I was anymore. My identity was as a leader in the learn to swim business arena and in drowning prevention. I was the vice president of Stop Drowning Now. So it was a really challenging time for me. And when he suggested that I think about or consider becoming an EOS implementer, I really sat back and thought about it. I had run my business on another operating system before I hired Don Marenko to be my implementer. And I had done strategic planning for a few nonprofits prior to that. I loved that work. I had done it for myself. And I realized, in my self-reflection, trying to figure out who I was, I remembered that I'm a teacher. And so I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, and I'm an entrepreneur. And so as I dove into becoming an EOS implementer, it started to look and feel more and more like a right fit. And then when I went to boot camp and I lined up with the core values of EOS implementer, I just knew it was the right fit, as much as painful as it was to make this career change, this identity change. It just was the right next path. And here I am, I'm about to hit 5 years as an implementer. So 400 professions in and 5 years in August.
That is wild. So one, congrats on that. Congrats on the sale of the business. Probably not the circumstances, but a milestone in that journey nonetheless. And then transitioning into something in which you found incredible passion for. Like, do you find that you have a sweet spot when it comes to clients, or are you industry agnostic? Or, I know there's some implementers out there that are like I do it all, but like it's family run businesses, because I used to own a family run business. For you, is it like, physical kind of retail and they've got multiple locations? Like, have you found kind of where your sweet spot is, or are you like, no, I do it all?
I kind of do it all. I think my sweet spot's more, it's not the buttoned up people, it's not, the super serious, no sense of humor. My sweet spot, I really just love the team building. What I started out saying, I love progress. I love possibility. I love, potential. And so I get it. It's just like teaching swimming lessons. You get a kiddo, they come in at 4:00, one caliber of swimmer, and they leave at 4:30, a different caliber of swimmer. How's fun? Same thing. Come in at 9 a.m., one caliber of team, and they leave at 5:00, another caliber of team. And I just love that. I love watching them march toward their vision and execute with, focus and discipline and accountability. And I love their willingness to be vulnerable with themselves and each other as they're gelling into their teamness. So that's what I love about it. Just progress. I just love to see how them growing and thriving and achieving. So that's my niche. The ones that are hungry, ready to go, learn it,
And when this podcast is obviously distributed, nationwide, and I think we've got listeners from everywhere across the world. Is this something where do you look specific to the local Texas region for you, or do you have clients that you either do virtual or travel to?
I have clients all over. I do have a good amount of Learn to Swim business clients or child-centered businesses. But I do a lot. Probably 50% of my work is virtual. I'm in Tahoe right now. We bought this condo next door to my best friend, and I'm doing my virtual sessions. I have, from an agnostic standpoint, I have some really fun teams that are child-centered. I have a winery. I have a couple of marketing firms. I have just recently had a oil distribution group. I have a brewery, which I can't wait to go taste. They're in San Antonio, but we're working virtually. I have in Tahoe here, I have an interior designer. So we've been doing virtuals, but we're going to do it in person because here I am, so it's really, I love that EOS is agnostic, industry agnostic. I think that's really fun. And I happen to be an industry expert in child-centered. And so that's fun too.
Love it. All right. So Mary, someone's been listening to this and they're like, I need Mary to be my implementer. How would they get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me on my microsite on the EOS Worldwide website, or on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all those things. Private, or you gotta reach out. You gotta tap the glass.
And we'll make sure to put some links in the show notes as well. But I just wanted to thank you for coming on. I knew out of the gates, this is, by the way, the longest recording that I've had. And I knew it was going to be impactful, powerful, emotional. And so I wanted to thank you for coming on and sharing your story, your experience, because I think these stories are important. All too often, we just see the headlines of all the things that are going great and the next, Forbes and Fortune. But really taking a peek behind and talking about some of those tough things that happen, tragic things that happen, and what the fallout and dealing with crises and adversity, and specifically in a public environment, is just so valuable. So I just wanted to thank you for coming on and appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you, Ryan, for giving me the opportunity. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Confessions of an EOS Implementer is brought to you by Talent Harbor. To find out more about Talent Harbor and our fractional services and talent search solutions for businesses that operate on EOS, visit talentharbor.com. And then make sure to search for EOS Implementer in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Talent Harbor, thanks for listening.